What if foreign aid fails, not because people don't care, but because they overplan? We've spent trillions trying to solve poverty, and yet millions still go hungry. It's not because we lack compassion or cash. William Easterly argues that it's because we approach global development like a top-down design project rather than a human-centered one. This is the heart of the white man's burden, a critique of the aid industry and aid optimists of the time, like Jeffrey Sachs, and a blueprint for better systems, one rooted not in control, but in curiosity.
This book, it was very nice of the speaker to say it's been well received. It has gotten rave reviews from all members of my immediate family.
I want to share 3 lessons that I took away from this book. But first, I have to explain the story. Part 1. The burden isn't poverty, it's arrogance. The book's title is provocative, The White Man's Burden, but it's taken from a Rudyard Kipling poem that urged Western nations to civilize the rest of the world. The West spent $2.3 trillion on foreign aid over 5 decades, and yet it still failed to deliver schools, medicines, or jobs to many of the people who needed them most. But Easterly flips the meaning of this title. He's saying that the real burden isn't the poverty, it's the assumption that we, as the West, the outsiders, or the experts, actually know best. The assumption that we can design solutions from afar without truly understanding the people that they're meant for. Part 2. Planners versus searchers. Easterly introduces a powerful distinction. They create grand strategies, 5-year plans, global targets. Think things like IMF reform, UN declarations, eradicate global poverty by 2030, like the Millennium Development Goals, which were replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals when we realized that maybe we set the bar a little too high for what we were actually willing to do. Searchers, on the other hand, work from the ground up. They look, they ask, and they adapt. They don't presume to know the solution. They find it with the people they're working to help. Easterly says that planners announce good intentions, but don't motivate anyone to carry them out. Searchers find things that work and get some reward. As engineers, we recognize this. Top-down designs usually fail without user feedback. Systems that survive aren't necessarily the most elegant. They're the most iterative. But you don't need to be an engineer to know this. Most people understand this from personal experience. Maybe you're like me, and at some point you decided that you just didn't want to cook every day, so you would try meal prepping. But then you try to come up with a bunch of new healthy recipes, and you have to plan your grocery list, and you try to make 21 meals at a time, and it's super overwhelming. So then maybe you try batch prepping or just doing sheet pan meals, but even that's a little too much. So then maybe you cook breakfast and lunch, but you don't make your dinners ahead of time, and you iterate. You try a bunch of different things until you find what works for you, because what everyone tells you to do doesn't necessarily work within your context. You don't just wholesale keep the first solution that's presented to you, because it'll never be sustainable if it doesn't fit within the context of your life. Part 3. Design without context is just guesswork. Here's the systems thinking angle. Planners operate without feedback loops, so they're decoupled from consequences. It would be like me going to work and designing a surgical device without getting any user feedback. It might look great in CAD, but it would probably fail in the field. Case in point, millions of malaria nets were delivered to African countries, only to be repurposed as fishing nets. Why? Because planners assumed usage without asking about local needs or context. People needed safer, more effective ways to fish now than they needed to avoid malaria. These nets gave women and even young children the ability to help feed their families. It was much more quick and therefore effective feedback. And this behavior was not predicted by the people involved in designing and disseminating these nets. The real tragedy isn't that the aid failed. It's that we never gave agency to the people we were trying to help. Part 4. The danger of good intentions. We call this perspective aid pessimism. But Easterly isn't cynical. He seems to me to just be tired of unaccountable optimism. He would probably have a similar critique of today's performative activism. He argues that aid doesn't need more money. It needs more feedback. We need to be using resources more effectively. And to do that, we need to actually enact change and then adjust as we learn more. He thinks that poverty traps don't exist, but that aid fails because its implementation is unaccountable to its beneficiaries. When we control both for initial poverty and for bad government, it is bad government that explains the slower growth. He argues that no one is against ending poverty, but that the current system rewards bureaucracy, not results. I think he actually says that aid creates perverse incentives for bureaucrats, that good intentions shield bad design. This echoes a principle from engineering ethics. Do no harm is not good enough. You have to design to empower. Planners seek control, and searchers seek truth. Part 5. Systems I've lived in. Growing up where I did, I saw what real searchers looked like. My family is fantastic at solving problems ourselves, and I grew up around a lot of neighbors that also took care of each other, right? We solve problems from the inside out. You take care of yourselves because no one is coming to save you. Now, in a mega city, ignore the sounds, by the way, I see the exact opposite. I see systems that serve policies and not the people. Our transit routes and system clearly hasn't taken any feedback in the last 50 years. Our health system ignores cultural needs. And there's just like endless discussion about these things and no action is taken. Reading Easterly, I realized that we all build systems, but the real question is whether or not we are listening to the people inside of them. Part 6. 3 takeaways we can use. Number 1, design your life with feedback loops. Don't just build systems, build in listening. Whether it's an app, a device, a donation, a random new habit you're trying to build, ask, what happens after this is used? How will I know if it's not working? And at what point do I need to change my approach? Number 2, question your assumptions. Planners assume they know the problem. Searchers know that they don't. In your work and life, always ask who's been left out of the conversation. What have you failed to take into account? And number 3, empower, don't impose. The best aid, like the best engineering, doesn't solve the problem for people. It helps them solve it themselves. If you teach a man to fish, well, I guess it's better than giving him a mosquito net. The world doesn't need more heroes. It needs better listeners. William Easterly's critique is uncomfortable, but essential, because it reminds us that good intentions aren't enough. Only humility, accountability, and curiosity can build systems that actually work.